and welcome to Moving Kentucky Forward. I'm your host, Bruce Maples, and in this week's show, we're joined by Cherlynn Stevenson, State Rep from Fayette County. She is one of the co-founders of the Commonwealth Caucus, a new group dedicated to finding common ground for the common good. It sounds like a great idea, but the proof is in the pudding and the devil is in the details, as they say. Also, at the end of the podcast, we have a very special announcement about something coming up at Forward Kentucky, so I hope you will stay with us for that. It's Tuesday, July the 30th, and time to move Kentucky forward. Let's get started. We are here with Cherlynn Stevenson, a representative from Fayette County. Welcome to Moving Kentucky Forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I wanted to speak with you because you were one of the co-founders of this new caucus, the Commonwealth Caucus, which has a motto of finding common ground for the common good. Why don't you take just a moment and explain what this is and why you felt the need to start it?
So it really is just a caucus of some new, we call ourselves technically junior legislators. Chris Harris came in, I believe, in 2015 and is the oldest person in our caucus. And we really have just been frustrated with what we have found in Frankfort since we got there. You know, we had all hoped that we would be able to work, I think, in a more bipartisan manner, but what we have found is just hyper-partisanism, and it's become, it's frustrating for those of us that are new and feel like we were elected to go do the people's work. And so we really just wanted to start talking about issues that we feel that every single Kentuckian can come around and agree on. So we wanted to talk about those issues in the public, and we also wanted to be sure that we were challenging ourselves, our colleagues, and the citizens of the Commonwealth to look at each piece of legislation, and the first question be, is this what is best for our people, their families, and our local communities?
So, I appreciate the fact that you have named it as being bipartisan, but of course, when I look at the group that's in there right now, it's all newly elected or relatively newly elected Democrats.
Right.
Have you had any response from Republicans since you announced this?
So, we are in talks with a few Republicans. You know, when I first came up with this idea and started talking about it and talking to some other folks about it, I actually had a couple folks that were technically on board, and just what we have seen in the regular session, what we just saw in special session, is that hyper-partisanism that I think is really dangerous to us. It's destructive, and we need to try to get around that. So those people, decided to not join at this time, and I completely understand that. I'm hoping that as we go across Kentucky and talk about this and we share our message a little bit more and just really get out there, we plan to talk about issues. We don't want to talk about parties. We want to talk about issues that affect everyday Kentuckians. And when we get out there and we talk about that, we hope that more constituents will be letting their legislators know that they want them to work in a bipartisan manner, that they want them to reach across the aisle, to even join this caucus. And so we want to leave it open as a bipartisan caucus to say, we welcome anyone from across the aisle that wants to join us to talk about the policy platform that we put together that we think are the shared values that every Kentuckian can get around.
So when you talk to some of the Republicans, let's start with them, and you shared your platform, did you get any agreement on any of the issues from anybody across the aisle?
We did. Two people in particular were very much on board with everything that we talked about. I went over that list of policy platforms with them. They saw the document, and they were in agreement. But again, I hate to use the word retribution because I feel that may be a little unfair. But I think that they were worried. They were worried about the reaction from their leadership, from honestly, from some of their constituents who, that hyper-partisanism that I keep talking about and mentioning, it's coming out of Washington, it comes out of Frankfurt, and all you have to do is scroll down your Facebook page, and we all see it. We all see that. And so this is just hopefully, a little something that we can do to move people away from that and to bring everybody together and say, you know what, as Kentuckians, we believe that these things are important, and this is what we need to be working on to build a stronger Kentucky and to move Kentucky forward.
Well, the reason that I keep poking at this
Right.
is that there are 2 or 3 frameworks that people use when they talk about political division. And one of them is partisan from the standpoint of party, Democrat versus
Right.
Republican. Another one is urban versus rural, which we hear regularly. And another one is wealthy versus middle class and poor.
Right.
And your policy platform seems to be aimed more at the last, more about we want to do what's best for the majority of Kentuckians and not necessarily for millionaires and billionaires.
Right. And we are, we're very forthcoming about that because obviously when you look across the landscape of Kentucky, and you mentioned the rural and urban divide, I think that when people from those areas really stop and look at the situations that they're in and the issues that they're facing, they're almost identical. They're both the real Kentucky. And I believe that those people, feel kind of voiceless right now. They feel a little bit powerless right now. And so we really want to give a voice to those people who make up the large majority of our Commonwealth and be sure that their voice is getting heard and that they are absolutely being represented in Frankfurt.
Well, so let me ask you about that because I've been pushing on you about the Republicans. What about other Democrats? What kind of response have you gotten from them to this platform?
Well, they are all very supportive. They are in agreement. And honestly, I think almost all of them would like to join at some point. But at this point, I think if we only just keep adding lots and lots of Democrats, then, the chance to get some Republicans on board probably lessens for us. And so if every single Democrat joins, then we're just the Democratic House Caucus again. So, and it's not that we want to leave them out, but really, when I looked at the people who, wanted to help spread this message, and we feel like we have the time that we can put in the interim to do this work and to get out and cross the state and talk to folks from every region, from Western and Eastern and Central, Southern, Lexington, Louisville. So we have people from all of those areas, and something that we hope to do as well is when we go to those different areas to have a town hall or a roundtable discussion or whatever you want to call it, that people get to see people that don't look like them, don't talk like them, don't come from a neighborhood that looks like theirs. But again, when we start talking about the issues that are facing those everyday Kentuckians, they're mostly the same.
So have you gotten any response? We've been talking about politicians. What about voters?
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard anything from voters? Have they paid attention to the story, and have they said anything?
They have. The response really has been overwhelming. Already, in less than a week on Facebook, we have over 850 likes. We have heard comments like, "This is the first thing I've seen out of Frankfurt that has given me hope in a really long time." The response has just been tremendous. I think each caucus member has been approached by people in their own districts, and but on social media as well, we really have gotten no negative feedback. It's been really amazing. People are very excited, and they feel like it's a message that hasn't been coming out of Frankfort in a while.
It's early days, but have you talked to Rocky Adkins or any of the other leadership about it for the upcoming General Assembly?
Yeah, actually. So I talked to them before we announced, and if you look at some of the pictures from the press conference that we held, he was actually there, and he stood there silently. He didn't say anything. He didn't want to take any of the focus away from us and the message that we were sharing, but he stood there with us as a sign of support. So, leadership is on board, and they encourage all of us to be individuals and to do what we need to do, in our own districts. And we work together tremendously well. We aren't a hive mindset. We all, have different things, and everybody's district looks a little bit different, and the issues that face those districts can sometimes be slightly skewed one way or the other. And so, they're excited about the possibility of what this could do, of what, us sending this message and just saying, these are the things that we think are important. We're talking about public education and job training. We're talking about rebuilding our infrastructure and investing in that. We're talking about a healthy Kentucky, and we believe those are things that everyone can get around. But we also want to be sure that when folks hear those things and are like, yes, these are the things that matter to me, they matter to me, they matter to my family, and they matter to my local community, then they'll start paying attention to candidates and say, well, who here is delivering that message? Who's talking like that? Who's going to do these things that, are going to matter to us? Who is really going to help us prioritize our local community over the wealthy, the millionaires, the billionaires, and outside interests that are coming in for cheap labor? When they say that jobs are coming in, we need to ask questions, and we hope that they will learn to ask those questions. How many jobs are we talking about, and what's the quality of those jobs? Are they part-time or are they full-time? Mm-hmm. And what do they pay? Do they pay family-supporting wages? And finally, how long are they going to be here? So again, I think it's just something that we're hoping that we can get some people to really stop and think and refocus on those issues that we believe everyday Kentuckians hold and share, no matter what side of the aisle they fall on.
So we're some months, obviously, away from General Assembly, but time is
Mm-hmm.
of the essence. Are there bills that are going to be filed based on this platform?
They probably will. It is early days for us, but we have had some conversations. Some of us that are in the caucus have already been working on, everybody's been working on some bills. And so a few people say that they believe that they have some bills that will be perfect for this group to really champion and get behind. It's a little early for me to go ahead and say what those are at the moment, but you will see that kind of stuff coming out from us.
So on the one hand, like we've talked about, this looks like a fairly standard progressive platform. When I look down through here, I think, well, these are all progressive positions for the most part. I worry, and I wonder if you all worry about getting pigeonholed in that space, or do you really think you're going to be able to break through to the word common sense and have, people say, well, of course we should be doing these things?
Right. Well, and again, I think right now the labels have gotten out of control. So you can call, an issue progressive, you can call it liberal, you can call it conservative, but ultimately at the end of the day, if it's going to benefit the large majority of Kentuckians, their families, and their local communities, then people need to get behind those and champion those, and they need to be calling their legislators and saying, hey, this matters to me, and we think that this is what's important to move our state forward. Sometimes progressive gets used with a negative connotation, but honestly, this is about forward movement for our state and building a stronger Kentucky. And so if somebody wants to label that progressive, then they can. But again, part of our mission, or per se, is to get out there and to not talk about labels, but just to really talk about these issues and how they affect our communities.
Well, if these look so common sense, and they certainly do to me,
Right.
why would some legislators not want to sign on to this? It would seem to me
That's
that
the $1,000,000 question.
it would seem to me that anybody that's in public service would see a headline, rebuilding our infrastructure, and I just don't even understand why they would be not, yes, we need to do that.
Well, and again, I think that is absolutely the $1,000,000 question. I think that the question that voters need to be asking, if you have someone that is not talking about these things and they are actually against these things, is that really what's best for us? I think that it's something that they need to be asking, and hopefully we can help people say, again, if we are asking that question about every single bill that comes across our desk and we are asked to vote on, then I hope that voters start to ask that about each of the candidates that they consider, when they go into the ballot box.
Well, let me diverge from this just a little bit and ask you a couple of questions that are sort of related. You're a new legislator, and a lot of these people are, and you commented in your press release about what we thought we were going to Frankfort to do and what we learned when we got there. Without naming names or even parties, did you run into a lot of people who really seem focused on just holding onto their seat more than passing good legislation?
I think it is true. I think it's probably true at all levels of government. I met with John Yarmouth before my election, and we talked about that. We talked about the changes that we have seen in politics over the last few years, and I think he said it best. He said, when I used to go to Washington, we were all friends, and it was great. And we got there, and we put on our legislator hat. And when it came time to go home and run for office, we'd take that hat off and we'd put on our candidate hat. But too often now, too many people never take that candidate hat off. And I think that does happen. And I think some people walk a fine line. However, I think sometimes what can be voting your district can be misconstrued as trying to hang on, to your seat. We are representatives of the people, and I don't take that lightly whatsoever. I do have my own set of values and morals, and you do have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror in the mornings and be able to go to sleep at night. But however, there's 42,000 citizens here that I'm their voice in Frankfort. And if they overwhelmingly are telling me that they want something or they need something, then it's my job to go up there and try to make that happen if I am a true representative of the people. So, I think there are fine lines around that, but I think it is true that it happens.
Well, let me ask about one of these. The last bullet on your platform is strengthening our democracy. And it's about expanding and improving access to voting, increasing transparency in campaign funding, and restoring voting rights to those who've repaid their debt to society. Again,
right.
I look at this and I go, well, of course you would want to do that. Why have none of these things seemed to get traction in Frankfort?
It's tough. We did one thing that we did do. We passed an expungement bill this past session, and so that's creeping forward. And I think sometimes, in order to make progress, we have to take baby steps, and several of us get frustrated by that. But we have to be, moving in that direction. But I think that we do have to ask ourselves: are we seriously in a place where supporting democracy and being sure that every vote counts, is something that some elected are against? And I think if you think about that, then that's we deserve to know why they think that way. And I think that it's something that we hope to accomplish, is just to get more people engaged in the process, wake some people up, and be sure that they're watching what their representatives in Frankfort do. I think too often a lot of people sit back and they assume that Frankfort's working for their good. And sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. So, we are going to be encouraging Kentuckians across the Commonwealth to ask those hard questions.
Well, let's talk about Kentuckians that might be against this. You framed it as we're trying to take care of everyday Kentuckians and not necessarily just millionaires and billionaires. Have you gotten any pushback from what you would perceive to be money, or do you anticipate that you're going to get a pushback on this from people who are wealthy or from wealthy interests?
Right. Well, we haven't yet. I'm sure that we probably will. At some point, I'm sure that we will hear about that. But ultimately, again, we hope that when that happens, people are paying attention, and they notice that there are a group of people, and that if they're pushing against things that are for the betterment of everyday Kentuckians, then I hope that they start paying attention to what electeds those people are connected to. And again, part of my goal in forming this is, again, to get Kentuckians to pay attention and start asking those hard questions.
Good. Cherlynn Stevenson, we appreciate your time. This is an exciting thing. I'm really looking forward to it, and I will be really looking forward to the day that you get one or two Republicans to join in with you on this, so it can truly be bipartisan.
Me too. And thank you so much. Thanks so much for being interested in our little engine that hopefully can, and for giving me the platform to talk about this. I appreciate your support.
That was Cherlynn Stevenson, State Representative, telling us about the Commonwealth Caucus. We love their platform and the idea of bipartisan, common sense solutions to move our state forward. Let's hope they get a number of Republicans to join them to put those solutions in place. Now for the special announcement. We have decided to hold our first statewide Fall Summit on Saturday, September the 7th in Frankfort. We're calling it the Take Back Summit, as in taking back Frankfort, winning back voters, and taking back our state. We've got John Yarmouth and Attica Scott lined up to speak, and we think Andy Bashir is going to be there as well. In addition, we'll have lightning panels on things like attracting young voters, public education, and a special panel on how to ditch Mitch in 2020. We'll start the day with a continental breakfast and end with a deluxe lunch buffet and be done by 2 p.m. Early bird tickets are on sale now, but there are only 100 of them, and after that the price goes up. So get to forwardky.com and reserve your spots today. Be part of our first Forward Kentucky Summit. That's all for this week. Be sure to go to the site to sign up for our newsletters and to become a member, and get your tickets to the summit before they're all gone. See you next week.